Record will be on. Okay,
Great.
take
All
it
right.
away.
Thanks, Neil. All right. So set the stage a little bit. SnapApp was a B2B MarTech product. The way we kind of, I'll talk about like the features first, just so everyone can kind of picture it in their head. So SnapApp was a platform that B2B marketers could use to create what we called interactive content. So ROI calculators, surveys, assessments, think like a really beefed up Typeform, SurveyMonkey, that kind of stuff. Tight integrations with marketing automation. We viewed ourselves as a way for B2B marketers to capture a lot more insightful information, top or middle of the funnel that then hopefully helps the sales team downstream. I joined the company in 2014, right before they started doing like serious fundraising. By 2018, we'd gone through a Series A and a Series B. You get like the nice curve of customer growth, and we started to experience. This was like probably early 2018, kind of sitting on the leadership team, looking at all the different metrics, and like our churn was just through the roof. So we were selling and selling and selling, but then folks weren't really using the product, which was causing a lot of problems. So what you're seeing here is this was pulled right from our sales deck at the time. This was our kind of like external positioning statement. So transformative customer experiences through interactive marketing. This was like terminology that we had been using to kind of get us to the point where we were at. And we started to realize the whole we had people buying us for a variety of different reasons. Well, the kind of vision and the purpose of the product was very clear internally. We started to notice kind of patterns in churn as far as what people thought they were buying and how they were or weren't using the product. Do you want to go to the next slide, Neil? So some of the, challenges that we started to see is like interactive content means something different to everyone. So whether we're using like interactive content or interactive marketing, using the term interactive became kind of like a loaded terminology for marketers. So I know there's marketers in the room. One of the things that you find when you start to kind of dive into personas of different folks is a lot of marketers, especially like the ones that are in the design side of the house, tend to think themselves as highly creative individuals, and they will spend an insane amount of time fine tuning little, pieces of landing pages and making like the visual component of the experiences they're creating means a lot. We kind of sold this product based off of the number of pieces of content that you could be created. So our packages was, the typical, you know, small, medium, large enterprise. And the biggest lever that the sales team had historically was the more pieces of content that you create on the product, the more we'll charge you. So we were, the sales team and CS teams kind of incentivizing customers to create more and more pieces of content. The challenge was when we would have these users that would want to spend 3 months creating a single piece of content for a single marketing campaign, and their package is based on them creating like 20 a month. Misalignments, they could start dropping down in packages, and also like they're like, man, that took a lot of effort. We didn't get a lot of leads out of this. I don't know if it was worth it. So we started to find that the using the term interactive, what we were really is like a fancy survey tool, but we had folks buying us thinking they were going to be like an online version of InDesign or a better version of design tools for their marketing automation landing pages. Um, all the features and the adoption weren't hitting the targets. Like we were releasing a lot of stuff functionally to kind of give better and better analysis on the data, and folks just kept asking more about like the additional design tools, and the team started to feel misaligned on vision. The sales team found it really easy to sell us as a fancy design tool. The CS team was having a hard time getting designers to adopt the product. So we're just a little bit all over the place and not really able to hit the goals that we wanted to hit. So why the jobs to be done kind of appeal to us? How we came about this is I was already on the PEF. There was some interesting conversations around this topic going on at the time. The founder of SnapApp ended up going to some conference and seeing Bob Moesta talk. And Bob's talk was all on jobs to be done. And that kind of sparked the idea of like maybe this is something that we can give a shot at, right? The whole you know, psychological component of this is I've found very fascinating. So we figured this would help us get deeper into the core of like what do marketers actually need and how do we help better solve this. We also found that going through these conversations with either customers or prospects, when you do these conversations well, they're way more conversational and you get folks to really open up about what their work life is like, and it builds like a real strong sense of credibility that like you're listening and you understand them, particularly when you're doing it with existing customers. That was like a side benefit that we didn't realize when we were going through this, is the folks that we put through the interview process were like started to become more advocates because they felt like, we were there, we were listening. So that was really good. And then we saw it work, right? So all the case studies that you read about this stuff, there's the Snickers one that there's the Snickers and the milkshake stereotypical ones, but when you dig a little bit deeper in this, there's a really interesting stuff out there from Intercom around how they were able to apply this in more of a B2B fashion. And so I reached out to a couple of folks over there, had some conversations with them. So we knew it could work. So that's why we really wanted to kind of give it a shot. So next slide. All right, so we went through this. One of the things that, out of the key learnings, it's hard, right? So this is not naturally how most folks want to talk to their customers about their experience with the company, the product, right? Like the default methodology or mentality is like, tell me what features you need for me to charge you more money, or what's missing and why you cranky about it. Trying to have more of a emotional, trying to have a conversation that will uncover those like emotional drivers takes a while to really figure out. I mean, we ended up doing probably close to 20 of these interviews because it took us 10 to get it right. I think the first couple were a little all over the place, and you can't help but talk all over people, or positioning, or the biggest problem we had with the first couple is I'm the head of product, I'm the one that scheduled the meeting. They immediately just start firing away on their feature request list. So it took a while to figure out like how to navigate, like the opening questions and to do it right. Doing it for B2B is very hard, right? You have the buyer and you got the user. Their goals are disconnected very often. And so I think it took us a while to figure out like nuances in the approach, and we wanted to talk to both, right? And I even have this in my current company where you have to be, while you're selling to the one audience, the actual users are the ones that can tank everything for you, right? Like depending on how their experience with your product is, they can go to the folks that sign the contract and convince them not to renew. So we wanted to make sure that we kind of got both sides of the coin in the interview, which just kind of adds levels of complexity into this stuff. Outside help was huge. The one thing that I realized after going through this is you do any kind of research on jobs to be done. There's tons and tons of videos talking about how awesome it is. There's books. I got a bunch of books on the bookshelf. There's no practical guide on how to do this. And I think my thought on this after having gone through this is a massive competitive advantage if you figure out how to do it well, which is likely why not a lot of people are out there talking about how to do it well. So bringing in like Neil helped us a lot, just kind of figure out the nuances of like, how do we actually do this? We know we want to do it. How do we do it? I don't know if we would have been able to figure it out on our own. And the concept's not new, right? Like, so while there's different terminologies on things, everyone's out there, especially in the B2B world. There's only so many reasons why someone's buying a product, right? They're trying to get promoted. They're trying to save their job. Everyone's doing something more personal than just like, this is my goal for this quarter. So yeah, those are the key learnings. And then I think the next slide's the results.
Yeah,
right?
just as a question from Julie, very quickly, what did we find successful and how we set up the conversation to avoid getting straight into feature requests? One thing, let me try it, and then Greg, you can jump in. One thing is that when I went there, they had no expectations that I was there to talk about the product. So I could just jump right in and have a conversation about their business. And this was all about their business. This was all about getting emotion, at the emotions of how would it feel, how, what's going on, what annoys you, what frustrates you. And they weren't any of the questions about feature requests at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I think having Neil be there, not being me with the job title, when I had also talked to some of these folks before, helped. The other thing is my absolute favorite question to ask folks very early on. I still do this today is tell me something about your job that people don't understand. If you can find things like that to open the conversation up, they'll immediately just start talking about like some email they got from their manager and the manager doesn't have, like you kind of can start instantly shifting the mindset away to them and less onto like your product. So that was the thing, is just figuring out like the good opening questions. Like even if they are like, hey, Greg, I've had this feature request open for a year. When are you going to get to it? I'll be like, yeah, let's talk about that in a little bit. First, tell me a little bit what what's your day like today? What kind of stuff did you get into when you open up your email this morning? And then like, and everyone that I've quickly pivoting the conversation back to them and something that'll resonate a little bit more emotionally, I found was a really good way to at least defer the conversation. And almost, I mean, I still use these tactics today, and almost most of the time they will never go back to the actual feature they asked about. Like if you can navigate the conversation well and focus it more on like what are their pains right now, that might not ever come up, which is fine. And then it's actually preferred usually.
So a couple things to build on that. One is that it's real if a feature comes up and there's a product manager, it's almost like putting bait in front of a fish. It's so easy when someone says, well, I want to give you some feedback on this product. Well, the product management will almost automatically, by the way they're trained, because they spend 7 by 24 feet thinking about their features, they'll just take the bait and jump into a feature conversation. So that's one of the things. So often we do it to when we go into our feature conversation, Julie, it's almost like we do it to ourselves. We take the bait, we want to go in there, we want to talk about here's feedback on the product. Let me go and grab and listen to the product, as opposed to stepping back and answering some of the questions that Greg and I developed. And, we were able to overcome human nature and get product managers, in some cases, to stop thinking about the product as well. So, Greg, let's continue.
Yep. All right. So next slide. Yeah, and I think we just had this in our last talk about like if it's hard, right? So it's hard, but if everyone was doing this, then it really wouldn't work well. So I think next one is the results. All right. So this is the revamped kind of positioning statement that we started to use after these interviews. So we went from, interactive experiences, helping do all this stuff, to help marketers get the leads that sales want. So the biggest thing that came out of the conversations that we had with these B2B marketers was how much friction exists in every single company between the marketing and the sales team. And especially on the demand gen teams, which are the ones that we were trying to sell into, because in B2, like they typically have more budget than content marketers. It's sales constantly blaming them from sending over shitty leads or not enough leads. And it's marketing's fault that they're not able to hit their quotas. Right. So the one thing that we ended up tapping into from that emotional perspective, with first the marketing and then we started tweaking the product a lot, was really honing in on like, using Snap App, you're delivering the highest quality leads that you can to the sales team. I think the ultimate goal for most B2B marketing MarTech products is the ability to have product metrics that show that you're influencing the sales KPIs. And so that's ultimately, we started to use this type of language, and it immediately led to significantly different conversations in the sales pipeline. Instead of going through all, the discovery calls, trying to compare the design functionality of our product to InDesign or something like that, we started to talk more about like, what information do you need to capture to help open up a MQL? Like what turns an MQL into an SQL? How can you help capture the right kind of data to be able to make that transition? It instantly changed the sales conversation. And then when we would sign those customers, the conversations with the CS team was immediately different too, It was more around like getting up and getting, focus less on the bells and the whistles and the animations. You've got all these campaigns coming up. How do you get more information about the leads that you're capturing so the sales team can close their deals quicker? And so Neil, you want to go to the next slide? Yeah, and so this is just like another slide. This was like the previous slide was like our mission statement. This was the revamped slide from the sales deck. So SnapApp helps marketers deliver leads the sales wants by interacting with prospects to uncover intent. So this put us in a way different mindset from a market perspective. We were less a design tool, and we're actually more aligned with like ABM type solutions at this point in time, like where we're all about capturing intent data and helping your team act on that intent data. And then next slide. And so what ended up happening after all this stuff in early 2018 is, so first, all new positioning and messaging, threw everything away from a sales and marketing perspective, revamped the website, all that stuff. Whole new sales playbook that reduced the sales cycle pretty significantly. Like the amount of, on average, there's around 25% less calls to close a deal right out of the bat. Whole new onboarding approach.
Greg, could you say a little bit more about the sales cycle reduction?
Yeah. So I think when you're trying to sell a design tool, you get into way more conversations with way more folks on the, like the VP of marketing needs to bring in the demand gen team and the content team, and then the content team wants to bring in their designers, and would be like demo after demo after demo before you could finally get someone to sign the deal. This went made to like, you don't need to bring in, let's bring in the demand gen, the head of demand gen, ask what data they need to capture as part of their campaigns, and then let's go. So we had a significantly less amount of demos that needed to happen in order to close a deal. Same with like the onboarding approach. Instead of onboarding like the Marketo person to do the integration and the demand gen person to figure out the campaigns, and then the designer for this, and then the content marketer, it's like we try to pivot the whole idea was like pivot the customers away from creating these like massively immersive, visually stunning experiences that then would just have a form at the end, and to take more of like a data capture approach, right? Micro experiences that look nice but are dead easy to create. And you can do one for every campaign, right? It's so easy to do that you can just slap these into every campaign rather than saving all your effort to just do it on the biggest campaigns of the year. So the onboarding approach took, we get a customer using the product in, like one session versus like several weeks of back and forth. We ended up,
and that gets at the time to value that we talked about as well, Greg. If they're getting it in one session, they're more likely to see value, less likely to churn.
Yeah. And so and the idea of like what was time to value in this was the ability for us to show that we can create quality leads, right? So the quicker we could get them to create a piece of content to start capturing leads and the firmographic data about that lead, the better they could judge the types of leads we're able to create for them. And we would rather them see that value within the first few weeks rather than the first 6 months. So getting the product up and running as fast as possible, getting them to deploy these pieces of content in live campaigns as quickly as possible was like critical to our ability to kind of like get those hooks in and make them a success.
Yeah, and the value metric shifting from number of pieces of content to leads generated, that's way more compelling.
Yeah, and we ended up like just removing all the pricing around pieces of content too, right? We just made everything unlimited, right? That was a mental thing that we just didn't want folks to have to worry about.
Not to oversimplify, but it sounds like outcome versus activity, which is obviously huge and a great result. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And then from the product side of the house, we created kind of like a newer version of the product that was like had about 70% less features. So we stripped out as much as we could, boil it down into like the essentials of, removing the things that were like the bells and the whistles that didn't actually add to the ability to capture more insightful data, right? We took away a lot of optionality into how these micro experiences could look, and it worked. You know what I mean? Like people got way because we had all these design tools that we had built up over the years. Like people just would spend weeks and weeks and weeks designing these experiences that like 100 people would go to, they'd capture 10 leads out of them. And so the version of the product ended up being significantly scaled down. Quicker and more productive conversations with customers and prospects. And the ultimate like success metric here was like this new approach that we started in, I would say like late 2019, got us enough like traction and momentum to be able to like sell SnapApp at the end of 2019. So SnapApp ended up getting acquired by a bigger MarTech company around November of 2019, which is kind of like, it all worked. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the, you know, like we were able to kind of like hit that end of the journey for us, largely based off of how that new parent company perceived the current go-to-market strategy versus the we were previously trying to approach.
Okay, Greg, fantastic. Great, congratulations. You touched on a lot of different issues. I see there's a lot of questions in the chat. What I'd like to do is move people to breakout rooms very soon. Matt, if you could stop the recording, that'd be great.